after a further check with this particular guest we have today. The last time we officially spoke to them, it has been 11 months. And July 30th will make it exactly a year, but we couldn't wait for it to clock a full 365 days until we had another conversation. He is a very distinguished guest, but in one way or the other, maybe an honorary Ugandan. Welcome to the Fat Cats podcast. My name is Ruben Kihumuro, yet again here for another candid rugby conversation. And with me is Rugby Africa President, Mr. Herbert Mensah. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you for hosting us. Last time we had a conversation, we were out next to the coffee space.
That's right.
A bunch of giants passing in the background. But this time round, we are in your humble abode. I don't know if I can call it that.
Yeah, I'll accept that.
Well, since the last time we spoke, you have been in Uganda quite a number of times. But correct me if I'm wrong. This period that you have been here is the longest that you've been here consecutively.
Absolutely.
Any particular things that you've gotten the chance to enjoy that you have not on other visits here to Uganda?
No, not really. I've come back and it's the people, it's the environment, it's the country, it's some of the food. It's all absorbing. It's all absorbing.
Yeah, sometimes for people like you, the challenge is that they say in Luganda they would say omuntu omukuru as a big person, so they wouldn't want to take you in what would be maybe the ordinary fun spaces. But however, it's interesting to see you've been taking some time even on match days of the Rugby Africa Cup, going to just be in the general area and have fun with the people, but also just to be there and experience what it's like. Also, I had a chance of viewing you at the after party on match day too, having a good time. So how do you find that balance of not being that guy who's perceived as high and mighty, but always trying to connect with the everyday person?
I think connectivity is critical. And in a game like rugby, you need to be able to connect between yourselves and with the fan base. So on the first day, I watched the Kenya-Uganda match actually in the fans zone. I was actually up in the crowds with Big Edward from Nile Brewery, and we were shouting and chanting Uganda and other stuff that I couldn't pronounce. But I got into that, and it's a great vibe. And what the guys on the other side, supposed VIPs, don't understand is that the best view in the house is across the park. So up there, I got great view, and in the fan zone afterwards, that was a real experience.
I think I do agree with you. Even with us, you do get the media passes, and maybe they have a bunch of access maybe to VIP, VVIP, but there is nothing like watching the game with the general people. I don't like calling them ordinaries, but they're the general space, and I think it's so much fun. The emotion is on a whole different level. But this year's Rugby Africa Cup, I think let's get into that conversation because we have a bunch of things to really dissect. But what have you seen with the action this year?
Oh, it's great. I think that the standards are very high from 1 to 8. You see great quality rugby. You see an improvement from last year. I think the differences come where you have some of the teams not being able to get enough play time.
Yeah.
So it's not a question of ability. You'll see the Namibias and the Zimbabwe's, the Algerias, etc. Are playing rugby continuously.
Yeah.
It's much the same as going to the World Cup and you find a tier 1 nation having 12, 15 test matches a year. And then somebody who's qualified from Africa plays one set a year. So in 4 years, they played about 8 tests.
Yeah.
And somebody's playing 12, 15 in 1 year. It makes a great difference in terms of skill set, conditioning, stamina, the ability to read the game. Things come naturally to you as to one phase, second phase, what happens next, transitional play, decisions that you've got to make in an instant.
Yeah.
It doesn't come by training or playing training matches. It comes competitively all the time. So that's the difference that I see. But in terms of the desire, the strength, the quality, I think fantastic.
I think one thing I've noticed about this particular tournament with the North African sides and the West African sides is that they have had that exposure of playing in the French league, whether at different levels, whether it's at the top 14 or the lower leagues, as compared to Eastern African sides and some of maybe the Southern African sides. Do you think that maybe Eastern Africa and maybe the lower sides, apart of course from South Africa, that they need a bit of support in also connecting outside? Because I believe, at least from my perspective, that exposure is very, very key. I did do some homework on, take for instance, there's a player in Senegal called Wilfred. The second name is just evading me, but he is one that has actually even featured for the French side a couple of years ago before maybe changing his nationality. Do you think that Eastern Africa and perhaps the lower south can have those opportunities maybe with South Africa, with other countries outside that can also help them get that exposure? Because you can see clearly the difference in the level of rugby.
Well, yes and no. I think that what makes me proud about Uganda in particular is that virtually your whole team is homegrown, which suggests that your domestic league is strong, which suggests that if there's greater investment in that program from youth growing up, you're going to get the quality. It's true, you have teams from North Africa, Algeria. I think the whole team lives and plays in France and has little to do with Algeria. So you see that difference. But for a country, you really need to develop internally. The problem is that if you're a fan, you want to win today.
Yeah.
If you're an good administrator, you want to win over a long period of time. You need to win off the field in business in order to win on the field. When you get the two coming together, like the Springboks, then you say, Mark Alexander, what have you done? And for me, he's the most supreme of global presidents because he's got it right off the field, put a very strong team with Yuri Ru, who we are lucky to have as our general secretary, and Rian Oberhauser, and they manage money, manage people. Then he's got Razi Erasmus on the other side, and that works on that side. Then you see, philosophically, they have a school system that works from the age of 5 going up into the system. So they've built a rugby culture. I think that here in East Africa, if you look at what you've got in the schools going upwards, it's the beginning of greatness. It really is. And then to be here in Uganda and see there's one team whose players are indigents. For me, as president of Rugby Africa, we can only grow because of that. How are you going to develop a fan base if none of your players are here? And yet your player is not called Sia Kolisi, but he's playing in some league in Europe or Japan. The fan base is built up because of the strength of what you have.
Yeah.
And it's only when the fan base grows that you get finance. You know, it's like playing in the new camp with Barcelona and it's empty. You're not going to raise any money. You know, it's like playing at Old Trafford if, look, I'm not a Manchester United supporter.
I feel sorry for you.
That's like a bad example, right? But you're playing at Old Trafford and then 76,000 people are not there. Then you're not Manchester United.
Yeah.
And the fact that Uganda's got this fan base, and the fan base is preaching all the qualities of rugby. They're happy. They got flags from other countries. They're really enjoying it. They're sad they've not won. But what they don't understand, that if the country was not winning off the field, if Godwin and his team were not winning off the field, I would never have sanctioned this tournament to be here in Uganda. And the fact that you had it for 2 years, and you've put on the greatest show on earth. Look, you guys are going to have Chan or whatever it is, football soon. And then you'll see how useless things are. You'll see the difference between this greatest show in town and, the football show. So what I'm trying to say on a serious note is that you're getting recognition because you're doing it right. You're getting recognition because you're growing it internally upwards. And then you say, what is the next step to get you to where it is you want to go? And that becomes, how do we change the competition models so that there are more competition models that have your noisy neighbors, yourselves in Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Namibia, other type of teams on a yearly basis. So you got maybe 1 or 2 15 set of tournaments every year, then the talent that you have is now going to raise itself up to another level.
Yeah, I think the beauty about podcasts is that in one way or the other, you fast forward through some of the talking points that I have, and you've talked about, of course, some of the continental aspects of competition between the countries. I did have a conversation with one of the players within the camp, and they did feel that this particular format is a bit cutthroat. Playing match day one, quarterfinal, and you're out, your chances are already gone if you lose. Also, in one way or the other, on our recent X Space, President Uganda Rugby Union Godwin Kayangwe did talk about a possible change to the format. I don't know what you can reveal about that in particular with this Tier 1A Rugby Africa format.
No, certainly we do need to change. The problem, as we always say, is that sport is big business. And when you have such a small budget to arrange so many competitions, this is almost as good as it gets. But we do need to change the format, and we are in discussions. I would love to see a situation where you have maybe even more teams. There's more of a round robin situation where you're playing each other before you get into the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
Because some teams need a couple of matches to get into their stride and then to make it work. So we do need to change that. And I think the big challenge from where I'm sitting is how do we raise that additional money to do that across the board. Men's 15s, women's 15s, 7-7s, eventually age grade. And how do you do it regionally into a competition so that the whole continent gets to play in different forms? That's the big challenge.
Yeah, and of course, for those that are watching this podcast right now, we are proudly sponsored by Rockboom. So while you're there listening, please make sure that you enjoy your Rockboom, but also with all your energy drinks, we advise that you hydrate as much as possible. And this has been an interesting period. I always call this last year I called it a festival. I want to call it a festival yet again, the Rugby Africa Cup. From the initial targets and goals that you had from last year. Yes, last year you did give us a bit of a background on how Godwin was very enthusiastic about having it in Uganda, and then of course having it for the second time. Do you think that you've ticked all the boxes that you need to tick for this tournament?
Look, I think so. Uganda this year has had the Webb Ellis Trophy. What's that all about? You know, Jonathan Webb, Vice Chair of World Rugby, has been here. What's that all about? David Carrigy, who is, I call in many ways the main man in different ways, was here. What is that all about? So you can't tick many boxes on that. You should ask, how did they feel when they came here? It blew them away. I mean, the people, the environment, then the infrastructure, the investment, the pitch, the grass, the tournament itself, the quality of match play. Then they went to the fan zone after. I mean, that just freaked them out. So they left here thinking, wow, maybe we could do more with Uganda. Maybe we need to consider what Godwin has been asking all these years for a Challenger series or something else to come here. And that was great. On a personal level, it means I can go back to the executive board of World Rugby and ask them that question again, which is, surely you recognize that Africa is the next growth market. Because right now, that's the debate, and they don't. If they did, we start getting greater investment.
Yeah.
So sometimes you can talk and people hear, they don't really listen. But when they come and they experience, as these guys came down here and they experienced and they had the time of their life, and the people they met were just so real and so friendly. They saw the beauty of the place, and they were now jumping up in the stadium like fans. It does Rugby Africa and it does Rugby Africa proud.
Yeah, and of course, with this particular tournament, you did talk about the progress that that Uganda is seeing for this tournament. But from a fan's perspective, or maybe to give you some feedback on what's happening with the fans, the team is not really performing the way they want at the moment, the hosts in particular. So when some of them, of course, watching this will not perhaps understand you when you talk about the progression, when they are seeing their team not really doing well after maybe having gone to Southern Africa for a period of preparation and then coming here and not doing their best on match day one against Kenya, match day two against Morocco, and also they have a game on match day three. So what would you tell a fan out there that hears you saying that this tournament is a symbol of progression and success while their team is actually down?
Well, it's a tough one because a fan is a fan. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, from the team that you support, you look and you see them losing and you're thinking.
Yeah, I know.
And if you take your head away from it and you say to yourself, what is the progression and what is the development? You know, I came from a world of football. So in running Kumasi Asante Kotoko all those years, I try to communicate better to people that it's a progression.
Yeah.
So now we went to schools and developed the kids from there, and you know it's going to be tough the first year, second year. And I said, I'm giving you a 5-year plan and a 10-year plan. In the 5-year plan, we should have taken this great team, one of the greatest in Africa, back into Africa. Guess what? In year 3, we're in the final of the Confederation Cup.
Yeah.
But people could then see that there was a progress, and they saw that there was a program to take indigents, to take them from schools, to get the right kind of coach, to make sure that the doctrine is there, and for the coach to understand that there was a Ghana Kumasi way of playing football.
Yeah.
Before then adopting the way. And clearly there's a Uganda way of playing rugby. We shouldn't forget that Ugandan rugby last year, you were the winners of the men's sevens at the Africa Games. You were the winner of the men's sevens, beating the Blitzboks in Mauritius. During that time, the women have now gone 1B, qualified and are now at the high table to play. The point I'm making is the pressure on a union to compete in the sevens, men, women, 15s, men's, it's massive. You can say it's too much. And that's why you see Namibia dropped out of all competitions. People don't realize that. They're only playing in the men's 15s. They don't play in any other Rugby Africa competition. So they focus all their resources and all their money on one competition.
Okay.
You know, look at Morocco. Morocco have focused their time on the men's sevens, but because they had a ban, they're not back in yet. But on the men's 15s. So they spent the last few months in France, in Agen, camped, preparing for this. There's no pressure on the women's sevens, women's 15s, even the men's sevens. It's just one team. Algeria, they dropped out of the men's sevens. So they did not field the men's sevens this year. They have spent 1 year preparing for this tournament, men's 15s. There's no Algeria women's 15s, no Algeria men's sevens. Even though they won the men's sevens in Mauritius 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
They then decided not to field any team, just have this tournament. So that's the top teams, right?
Yeah.
Zimbabwe are Zimbabwe, and I think they're a great nation. And they have focused on this 15s. They've got a great men's sevens. But all things aside, when it is you guys at full strength, they are not matching you on the sevens. Their women's are not matching you. So the trust system they've got means that Sables can focus on this. That's Zim, Namibia, Algeria, Morocco. You see, so now you're talking about yourself with Kenya, who have traditionally been a stronger side. And you could have won the match the other day. It was anybody's match. You know, you camped in their side for huge periods of time. And who knows? If the decision-making on a couple of plays had been different,
Yeah.
the game is Uganda's. You see, so if you break it down for the fans, so the fans to understand that sport is big business, Uganda has risen so far, so quick. Your government has put in this infrastructure. We have backed you as well. What is the result of the investments in Uganda rugby? One, you're the best seventh side in Africa. I know everybody will argue with that. Your noisy neighbors are going to argue. The Blitzboks are going to argue. But look, when you were at full strength, you beat the Blitzboks in Mauritius. Your ladies also won last year. Now we know the Kenya ladies are number one. And the Blitzbok are number two. But they got to come and show it. The point is you've put it out there. And I think Uganda should be proud. The question, as Godwin and your wonderful minister have to decide, is where do we go into the future? If the top countries are specializing in one team, two teams, can Uganda actually afford to say, we're not going to do all of them? The women have done so well to reach the high table, which means they're not in the World Cup this year, but they will now be preparing for the World Cup in 4 years' time. Do you want to deny them that? Or do you want to encourage them? So I think I say to the fans, you got to win off the field, win on the field. You're winning off the field. That's why I'm still here. 3 weeks I've been here and I'm not complaining. So you're winning off the field. And on the field, just look around. You know, it's not as though you won one sevens tournament, you didn't win anything else. It's not as though you didn't nearly beat Kenya. You did. You can say the second match was a bit of a disappointment, but the conditioning to pick yourself up 5 days later is not easy against really a top-ranked team which has been in France for the last 4 months preparing. Hey, if you don't support Uganda, I support Uganda. How about that?
I know you're not the tournament commissioner, but one of the things that actually also brought up conversation was the fact that according to last year's format and general understanding, especially with the placement games going into match day 3, is that 7th versus 8th is supposed to be played at 10 a.m. Then at midday, they're supposed to be 6 versus 5. Then the third versus 4th at 2 p.m. And then the final as the one closing the day. But however, we have had an interesting change in fixture where the host nation, Uganda, is going to be playing at 2 p.m. despite playing in the 7th, 8th placement game. And the update that we got on our forum was that it is a directive that came from Rugby Africa. I don't know what you have to say about that.
You know, this is the first I'm hearing about it. So you should know the directive did not come from me.
Okay.
I will ask. It's news to me. I will definitely ask. But I was not aware.
But from a general perspective, do you think it would be fair for teams that have done well, like Algeria and Kenya, to play at midday, and then the hosts who have not really been doing well to play just before the final?
I don't know. I'm wondering. I mean, I'm listening to you and wondering whether it is. You know, I've been in some tournaments where the host country plays the last game, even though they're not the best, because we're all out there to look for Uganda, right? Yeah. And maybe they don't want to play them first or whenever. On a serious note, I do not know, but I would imagine there's generally a team manager's platform. So whoever's the team manager for Uganda will be there on others, and if there's something not right, he would be shouting and saying. But did the fans want to play earlier?
Of course, I'm thinking at it from a business point of view. Many of the fans on a Saturday would not want to come and watch their team first at 10 a.m. I mean,
okay, so they're not.
So I think it's more of a commercial
it's a good
decision.
Thing.
It is a good thing, but I also feel like
Africa, go.
It's a bit unfair to the rest. But anyway, we'll get clarity on that from other sources. But this tournament has particularly had more space in between the match days.
Yes, that's
on a personal level, what have you been doing to keep yourself busy or to maybe wind down after such exhilarating match days?
I wish I could wind down. I'm just busy the whole time. I'm here today. This evening I have a board meeting, World Rugby board meeting, because I'm on the executive board. So I'm preparing for that fastidiously. Tomorrow I've got an Exco board meeting of Rugby Africa. And then Saturday I've got this, and Sunday we're out of town. So every day has brought something full on. Because of post-COVID, you don't get to meet other members of committees. They're all here now, so there's a lot of interaction with different people. They want clarity. They want to know what's going on in different commercial spaces. That's taken up full time. 4 days to 5 days, you know why, don't you?
Yeah.
Player welfare, which is why we're on 5 days now, not 4 days.
Okay. Yeah, but of course, for those that are watching, make sure you get yourself some Fat Cats merch. We say dress good, feel good, and we've been saying, of course, Saturdays are rugby days, but the season has actually brought rugby on interesting days like Tuesdays. So whichever days rugby happens is a rugby day. But make sure you dress casual, dress good, and dress rugby. Get yourself some bucket hats, some vests, some jumpers, depending on the weather, and look cool while you enjoy the sport that you love. But one of the things that's a general sentiment, of course, last year we did certify that you were the first Anglophone originated Rugby Africa president. It's been majorly Francophone based. The general sentiment around that is that there is that invisible line between Francophone nations and Anglophone nations when it comes to rugby interests. And many times when the Francophone nations are, in quotes, in control, there has been this thought process that they tend to do things that interest them. And one of the, in my opinion, most bizarre things that happened was when we had a Rugby Africa Cup played in France in 2022. Do you think that is true, first and foremost, that there's a bit of a bridge that when Anglophone is in control, Anglophones are the ones that benefit. When Francophone nations are in control, it's more on the other side? And if so, is there any way we can erase that line so that we can work as a unit in Africa?
Well, I don't think that's the case. As president of Rugby Africa, there's no advantage for Anglophone Africa, that is for sure. It's across the beat. Indeed, the biggest investment we've had in this time is what I negotiated with AFD, which we signed off, which was mainly, they came here, but it's mainly for Francophone Africa. So as a whole, I think that the three cultures, the Arabic North, which is Francophone, or Egypt Anglophone, Libya Anglophone, and you've got Francophone in between. Then you've got Francophone across the Middle Belt, West Africa and Middle Belt, and they got Anglophone through here. They manage life differently.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it. And you can see the way that in Uganda, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Namibia, etc., Zambia, it's part of a school system. And it grows in the system, which is why there are more and more players playing from here. So I think that is excellent. Look, I think the decision to go to Marseille, my predecessor, I'm sure if he had a chance to do it, he'll realize that that was a big mistake. I wasn't on the ex-cars co-opted, and I, myself, and a couple of others voted. Well, we didn't have a vote, we co-opted. But, we made it clear that it makes no sense. The imagery is wrong. It sends out wrong signals. So if you do compare Kampala to Marseille, this is 100 times better. It's
many of the stadiums didn't have any funds in them, and at some point, sadly, even some of the games were not being broadcast for Africa. So it was quite a hilarious moment and very sad, in my opinion. But
very sad. But look, we are, as an aside, we're attempting to change the constitution of Rugby Africa. I think that by the next General Assembly, a proposal will go in, and amongst the things in the proposal will be there is no French-English, where Africa is one.
Yes.
You may need a translator, but the rules of the game and everything are one. Yeah. So there's not one and the other.
Yeah. One of the things that, first and foremost, one of what I did in the process to preparing for this podcast was watch a couple of your previous interviews, and also you had, I don't know if I can call it a bit of a presentation / interview at the Africa Investment Forum, talking to a couple of investors and everything. One of the things that you highlighted was the difference between what Tier 1 nations get on an annual basis versus what Africa gets to share.
It's true.
is there any hope for that to improve, increase, for us to, because you have about 30 plus nations to deal with, but then you find that the budget that's given to Africa is less than even for one tier one nation.
Oh, no, it's true. I mean, the total budget for Africa is about $2 million. So how do you do $2 million into 6, 8 plus competitions and encourage everybody to participate? You don't.
Okay.
I think part of the issue, though, is that I'm not a great believer in aid.
Okay.
And as I talk with my colleagues on the executive board, I'm saying, let us be honest about our own realities. If you want to teach us to fish rather than giving us fish, then we need to change the models upon which we operate.
Yeah.
Give us access to different markets. Give us access to people who sponsor with you. Raise initial funding so that we know in 2 or 3 years' time we reduce the funding back to yourselves. It can be done. The fact that I'm in Uganda shows it can be done. And we were in Ghana last year, it could be done. Mauritius put on an extraordinary show. And Morocco did exactly the same. So we need more countries like Uganda, like Morocco, like Ghana, etc. Then it is that we can actually invest more in the game.
Okay. And one of the things that I did note, and many people perhaps have a question about, as yourself, the president, and of course your team at Rugby Africa, managing interests, looking at, of course, some of the bigger nations, the Namibia, South Africa, Kenya, and then you have some of the developing nations like Rwanda, DR Congo. All of them have different interests, different levels of progression, different support. How do you balance that out?
It's tough because Rugby Africa cannot, beyond a point, give out. And as I said, coming from a football background, we try to encourage the presidents of federations to look internally.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be saying, oh, what is Rugby Africa doing for us? We can provide guidance, we can provide governance issues, legislative issues, we can referees and match officials, but they should be in a position where they can raise sponsorship domestically, where they can go back to their governments and look to put on tournaments and that kind of thing.
Yeah, we've been a bit serious with our conversation, so I just want us to dial down a bit and ask some interesting things about you.
No problem.
From what I jotted down, one of the first things I wanted to ask was, what was that one match that made you cry, win or lose?
It was a football match.
It was a football match?
Yeah.
Was it Asante Kotoko?
Yeah. It was May 9th, way back when 126 people died in the stadium.
Oh, yeah.
And I was there and I carried about 30 of the bodies out. And, it changed my life. It's touched my heart. I set up a foundation. I still see the families. You take a more hardened view that comes into rugby of tolerance for disrespect, bad behavior, of administrators not doing the right thing, not communicating, not giving respect to the fans, of understanding you've got a bigger sense of responsibility and duty to the game, to the people, because people go to watch a game because they love it.
Yeah.
They don't go and watch a game to die.
And of course, one of the things that you did talk about, I read in some of the news that you told management to stop talking and act on things like hooliganism.
No, absolutely. I get into trouble because I talk a lot, and I say what it is I want. And in Ghana and places, I've taken on ministers of state.
Yeah.
Because most of them don't know why they have a job. They come in and think it's their political right to sit in office. That's why I'm so impressed with your minister here, because for 2-3 years I've been talking to the honorable minister, and he kind of gets it. And I've seen him in Ghana at matches. I've seen him in other places going to look and learn and try and understand and press the button on investment. But he's rare.
Okay.
I go across Africa, and most of those ministers have no business being a minister. But somebody needs to tell them, and in the right forum, I do. I'll call you out. Even back home, I've had to ask ministers to take the issue of investment and progress and love for that understand that you and their job is servitude. It's not your right. You don't own the sport. You don't
Yeah.
own the country. And no, I have called out many ministers, and been uncomfortable for them, not for me.
I know one of the beautiful things about this podcast conversation is I had a script, but I've had to go off script because many of the things that you hint on are some of the things that maybe I wanted to talk about at some point, but it's okay. You also at some point were being, I don't know if I should use the word quoted, if it's the right word, for Minister of Sport in Ghana. But it would mean foregoing your position as Rugby Africa president and those responsibilities. How did that end?
Oh, it didn't begin. I mean, I've been offered the portfolios before in life, but I don't take it seriously.
Okay.
Nobody can employ me in that regard
Okay.
because I can't be kept in the box. If you want to fundamentally change things, you come to me. It means the status quo is going to change. People's personal interest is going to get knocked over. You're going to have to break it down to do it right. You know, you need to sit down, if it is Ghana, and ask simple questions that you were the most feared country in Africa for football, and now nobody's afraid of you. Who has allowed it to degenerate to that point? And the fact that you're a minister means your responsibility is huge. Then if you're a president who's appointed a minister who doesn't know what he's doing, then we've got to call out the president at the same time.
Yeah.
Because the responsibility was 70% of the youth, under the age of 30. Then you appoint somebody who doesn't know whether he's left-handed, right-handed, whether his shoes are on the right foot, whether he's wearing a belt or whether the pants are on the outside of his trousers. Then he sits there because he's a minister and people are following him around. He's got police and people following him. It happens in too many places in Africa. And I go around Africa and they're smart people. And in my own country, I've had to call them out many times before and just think, you know, what the hell? You know, we're blessed with the best athletes in the world. And the reason that we often don't do well is because of the administrators. That's why I love Uganda. If it's rugby, I've got 40 presidents affiliated with Rugby Africa. The top 2, 3, 4 is Godwin. And I say it everywhere. I mean, people get it, they don't get it. And I often quote your minister. Because if I didn't have understanding, admiration, respect for him, we wouldn't be here. I mean, a number of countries want to host this. And for 2 years now, we've done that. So that story never began. I knew it wouldn't go anywhere. How are you going to appoint somebody who's clear in his vision? And I'm not going to come and toe a line. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to toe a line. Then it means I've got to take on the Minister of Finance. And you've got to take on the Chief of Staff. And you've got to go to a cabinet meeting and ask how serious are we?
Yeah.
You know, it is what it is.
Top 3 African rugby players that you enjoy watching currently.
Ooh, that's tough. I mean, apart from here, which I've enjoyed, people I don't know show massive skill set and heart. As a rugby person, you look at games, you predict games. I cannot predict the final. But I knew that Zimbabwe were probably going to beat Kenya. Not because they were better, but I knew the man who had the magic foot was going to kick when it mattered most. And that is in the big game. And he did. And drop goals and penalties from afar. And it doesn't matter how much beef you've got on you. If somebody's got that boot, he's going to win. But I think probably there's so many great players in Africa. Most of them now obviously are in South Africa. But when I watch Cheslin Colby, I mean, he defies physics, doesn't he? Because you can't have a man that size with the power of somebody 40 kilos heavier. And he's got a sprinting ability, the ability to turn on a ball, read the game. And I've met Cheslin Colby on a couple of occasions. What a humble man. So humble, you just begin to wonder, is this the person who's just lifted the All Black fullback 5 meters back, put him on his back, and picked up the ball and moved?
A big man like you, do you still get starstruck when you meet some of these guys?
I don't think it's starstruck, but I am just amazed. I met a number of people, Adi Savir at the World Cup, and he fascinates me because he's 95, 97 kilos, but he's playing as though he's 135 kilos. What's that all about? His engine clearly's got Duracell batteries because he doesn't get tired and he's still pushing it there. He gets tackled by three bigger guys. You know what it's like if you're 100 kilos. In front of you, there's a guy 160 kilos. Like that guy, the French front row. You've got somebody else 120 kilos. And you're still going to take the ball into them and drive them backwards. So there are lots of things that I watch, and you see greatness in teams and players. It excites me.
You've talked about your fondness for Uganda Rugby Union President Godwin Kayangwe. One thing that's similar about your journeys right now is that they are approaching the end. You have, of course, him remaining with about a year or so, and you're remaining with about 1 year and 8 months on your tenure as well. One of the biggest things we have had in Africa was that when one, let me call it a regime, when one regime comes, it's done, the next one has to start from scratch, clean up the mess. How do we now just foster continuity that, okay, I'm just picking up from this program and making it better?
I think it's a tough one. I think I worry about Godwin's exit, and because he has set a standard and a path. And if you see the people working with him, it's very interesting to watch. I was here with the World Rugby people, and his attention to detail is fascinating. His willingness to not play the big man and just be one of the others, as though he's still a team manager type, is fascinating. His ability to transition, and come and now have high-powered discussions on finance and the rest of it. And we went with Godwin. Godwin took us to see His Excellency, the President. So to have the many faces and still focus on the bottom line is incredible. And the question then is, what happens when he leaves? Because I always say to people, you can go to school and come up with pieces of paper, but what is still important is the character. So I said, look, I'm here with Ruben. I must feel what that character is. I mustn't say I'm going to go on to your podcast because it's a podcast. There are millions of podcasts. So do you feel comfortable? How do you assess? What is it about? Because there's nothing monetary in this. So it's a people thing that you're dealing with. And everybody that you deal with, and I look across the room, I've got an extraordinary young lady over there, and you understand that I've never said what degree or paper have you got. I understand that the people skills to manage and to do things. And Godwin, in his way, has got exactly the same. Me, I don't own Rugby Africa. I've got a year
but
or something.
It's the same story. What continues? I mean, many people will believe that there's been something different about your time. But then how does that continue? Because we want to see rugby in Africa grow. We want to see so many of the connections that we have seen.
Yeah.
Of course, there are so many things that still have to be worked on, but what happens afterwards?
Ruben, it depends on who takes seat. I took seat with a clean sheet of paper. I know the baggage that came. I know my predecessors had positioned Rugby Africa in a certain way, and I have only respect for them, but I don't see the life and the future the way they see it. I see that we need to be better aligned with South Africa. They voted twice against South Africa and for France in World Cups. They took a Rugby Africa Cup final to Marseille. I'm not criticizing them. I'm just saying I see life differently. I cannot see as an African sitting just around the equator saying that I don't believe in the beauty and strength of Africa. And that I now need to go and play in somebody's backyard in their third division stadium. Unless you're telling me you're giving me $20 million and I can then use the $20 million on the poorer countries and set up different competition space and grow. But that didn't happen. So I look at life differently, and the manifestation is here in Kampala. It's in Mauritius. It's in Accra. It's in the places where competitions have now changed. They don't look the same. And we need to now look and say, if I was staying, then it would be, how do we press that trigger for greater funding to change the model space? And that becomes a critical thing. And the lessons learned in this 2.5 years that I've been involved in this is the way and manner in which we all get elected is the only way, but it sucks. Because you end up having to do with business with people who, quite frankly, have no business sitting with you on the same platform. So now you're getting worried. No, you're trying to drive in a certain way and they're trying to pull you back in a certain way.
Okay.
You know, and sometimes you got to say, you black people, you got to learn to get on with one another. You know, the Jews do it, the Indians do it, the white boys do it. The black boys want to go fight with themselves.
I know.
You know, want to pull each other down, you know. And that, I think, when I say mindset change, Africa needs to change his mind because the big man upstairs has endowed us with this beautiful continent. I mean, I travel the world. If you haven't yet, you will. And if you close your eyes, you'll always think about places like this. And you can go anywhere in the continent of Africa. In between poverty or whatever else maybe, you will see. Where else in the world are there silverbacks? You know, maybe I'm dumb. Where else in the world are there silverback gorillas? I don't know. That's Africa. Giraffes, Africa. The food, the fruit, the beauty. The natural athlete who can run a marathon and can make it work without getting foreign protein shakes and the rest of it to make it happen. UFC fighters, you name it, footballers. And we just need Africans to stop that nonsense. I wanted to use a B word, you know, but there's a Gertrude will go after me if I use the B word on air, you know, and just learn to work together. And I think that's my only downside of this journey that we've been on. And I would hope that when it is the time is to leave, that somebody's fortunate enough to have 11 people on an exco driving in the same direction. You know, it's like you're rowing the boat in one direction, and then some idiot has put out the anchor and is trying to pull you backwards, as opposed to focusing on how we can take this great continent forward.
Yeah, well, you've done so many great things. Of course, your tenure hasn't gone without a few complaints here and there from people, and you're not the kind of guy to respond as always to these things. But one of the things that really, really came up was with the time of your World Rugby appointment and the voting of Sir Bill Beaumont. What do you have to say about it? I'm not going to put any words in your mouth. If you care to speak about it, what would you want to say about the criticism of not voting the other candidate? His name just skips my mind, but...
Oh, there's no issue at all. We went to France with a clear head in mind. And the voting, I'll tell you exactly how we voted. I voted with Paula Lanka from Kenya, who is my council member that I went with. It's actually interesting. We decided to vote in the same voting booth together. So the only two people who know how Africa voted or other people voted is the people who voted. And we just for time and space and for guidance went. And we went there with our big brother, Mark Alexander, South Africa. They have 3 votes. Rugby Africa only has 2 votes, as you know, the voting went. And we voted for Benazir. It's just nonsense. People who don't know better saying maybe we didn't vote for Benazir. We voted for Abdul Latif is my friend. Abdul Benazir is my friend, and we voted for him. He lost by 2 votes. Those people who didn't go to school, and therefore 1 plus 1 is equal to 2.5. They said, "Oh, Africa must have voted against you." What basis would it be for Africa to vote against Benazir? You know, and people who just want to get out there and create problems, then they'll say, "We voted for Benazir. We voted for Mark. We voted for Sally. We voted for a number of people." You know, and the people we didn't vote for. Now I've got great respect for Brett. I wasn't part of Brett's team. I believe Richard Sapias from Oceania was his team, who's on the regions with me. I chair the regions.
Okay.
And I knew I went into Dublin as a free agent. And as a free agent, I went in there with Paula. We sat together and we voted for what we believed will be in Africa's best interest. And in terms of the chairmanship, Why did we vote for Benazir? Because Benazir had a platform which was going to be hard to pass, but he wanted to reform governance in World Rugby. He said that he believed there should be one country, one vote, one continent, one vote. As opposed to now, we only have 2 votes.
Yeah, I was about to ask about that.
6 nations have 3 each. So you have 11 countries controlling 33 votes out of 52. So you're never going to get a change you want. It's not going to be like FIFA football that we believe that this and that. And if you look at the 11 countries, that is 6 nations, Japan and Sansa, the 4, only one of them manages their affairs in the way that they don't go back to government and other people for money, and that's South Africa. The rest are all heavily indebted. And yet they're getting between 80 and 150 million plus euros a year. So that change internally is what Benazir was talking about. And that's what everybody felt, that if he had the chance, he might not still be able to change it into 1 per vote, but it gives you a sense that there may be greater equity for us in that regard.
Yeah.
So why would we go and vote against that? Why would we say, oh no, because of that, we're going to go to Brett, he's a great chairman. He's now my chairman of World Rugby. I sit on the executive board.
Yeah.
And we heard his pitch, which was better governance, expand the game, and move in a certain direction, which is laudable.
Yeah.
But it didn't serve Rugby Africa's purpose in any capacity. Sitting on the EB is not a big deal. It doesn't bring money to Rugby Africa. And we don't get paid. I don't get paid as the president of Rugby Africa. You're aware of that.
I did know that.
I don't get paid for being on the executive board of World Rugby. Are you aware of that?
I didn't know that.
I don't get paid as the chairman of the regions. I've just been voted a 4-year tenure as the chairman of the regions of the world.
Well, it's a good thing you're saying all these things here.
I do not get paid.
I would think that you're giving us money to be here.
I don't get paid. Do you know that if my flight is less than 6 hours, I fly economy unless I upgrade myself. So I paid the upgrade myself. So it's these kind of, it must be like this and must be like that. There is no benefit. We do this because we've got all the war wounds to show we're rugby players and parts of our body no longer function because we've been in the wars. And we want to try and see if we can change the environment in which we're in. But it's probably better that nobody's paid as president of Rugby Africa, because if you've got people now even wanting to be me, wanting the job, not wanting to be me, and you said, hey, you got $1 million to do the job, then we'd be in chaos.
Yeah, well, of course, as we start to close, one of the things that I think, in my opinion, is a very big problem is the gap between the Tier 1A and what they call Tier 1-3 or Tier 1 nations and Tier 3 nations, rather. Bar South Africa, I don't think any African nation has won a game at the World Cup. But then also, we have seen a change in the sevens structure. And what comes to mind, first and foremost, because recently Italy put 73 on Namibia in the test games, in a friendly rather, and then they went to South Africa and also got themselves put, I think it was about 45 something, and with a 13-man South Africa side, they had 2 red cards. So there's a big difference between levels, especially with Africa. But now you look at it in that sense, and when I look at the Tier 1 nations, one of the things that they do have is a clear set of a program from at the beginning of the year, let's say from the Northern Hemisphere, there's the 6 nations, and you have the June-July series, and at the end of the year, you have the autumn series. In Africa, why can't we have a continent-wide Africa circuit or tournament where different countries keep visiting each other, but then also in the 15s, why can't we have something similar and also maybe a cross-club tournament within the continent so that they can increase on what we have as exposure and also game time? Okay.
I thought you were going to ask me another question. That would have been tricky. This one's not tricky.
Do you want to ask yourself
that? I'm not gonna tell you the one I thought you were going to ask. But look, on a serious note, you're right that The difference is there, and Namibia played a totally domestic side. Not many of their players that you're now seeing now. And they wanted to give greater exposure to that, and they paid the price for that.
Yeah.
Italy also did not come with their full strength team against the Springboks, but then, Razzie and the Springboks were playing around. They play with team selection. He's toying with things. He's preparing for 2027, and they are the world champions. So it was an honor for Italy to even be on the park with them. I think we just need to start getting more countries involved here in Africa. And then maybe it is you can. I know Godwin is working very hard and saying, why can't we take the Victoria Cup, expand it, bring in South African countries or provincial sides into that? Is there any space, television space? We need, and I noticed that he has done a great job here, and the new guys in Kenya seem to be doing a good job bringing in Uganda Airlines, bringing in Kenya Airlines. Because even if you say the players get nothing, but we can get them A to B without spending $1,000 per person per ticket for a situation, then we can do exactly what you're saying. If we can get hotels like this or other ones that somebody has interest in to put that up front, then we can create that space. Just imagine if you've got 2-stage 15s competition every year in Africa. So now it is that you've got Victoria Cup expanded, and then you've got out of the north also expanded.
Yeah.
West Africa have got to decide what they want to do. Got to stop fighting each other and misbehaving. But if it is that you take that and you've got Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, along with Egypt, you've got the basis for a tournament there, up and up. And they can do a 15s tournament, invite 1 or 2 teams into that space. Victoria Cup, do exactly the same here. Then, because we got no Rugby Africa Cup 15s next year, because you're now preparing for the World Cup here.
Yeah.
Then the cycle starts again. So it is very possible. And the basis of dreams is making sure the resources are in place. So I've seen discussions going on here between Uganda and Kenya, Zimbabwe and other countries, and the presidents are coming together and saying, look, maybe we can get that done. Now they need to extend it and go back to the commercial entities to see if they can make that work. And if they can, then we'll get more playtime. You get more playtime, then the greatest athletes in the world will win. And then the other thing is, at the last World Cup, Namibia got some bad scores on them. Do you realize that Chile and Uruguay got exactly the same bad scores? People forget that. They think it's just
Africa.
Namibia which did badly. But apart from Argentina, the other two got some 70, 80 points put on them for fun, And they get more money time and game time. Yeah, for fun, I think it was, It's not easy.
Yeah, so with women's rugby, what's the support like at the moment? Where is it?
Not enough. Frankly, it's not enough. I'm pleased to see the massive improvement in the South African women's game. Over the last 18 months, I've seen they're not going to win the World Cup, but I think they are now got a philosophy of team selection, training, the type of people who have joined the game now, which suggests that they'll be ready for the World Cup in 4 years' time. I've seen, again, the problem that we discussed with Uganda, that Kenya is their number 2 and is spreading the wings spreading things a bit thin. We've got Uganda winning the 1B and are now in the top level. They beat Madagascar, which means they're 3rd ranked in Africa.
Yeah.
And I guess internally, Godwin government have got to decide, do we have the investment to put into these ladies for the next World Cup in 4 years' time? I saw what they did in West Africa, fantastic. They got badly beaten against South Africa and Kenya because these girls have been doing it all the time and they have the investment there. Your girls have just come from West Africa. They did not need this tournament. Because the tournament is taking place, they win that tournament. So suddenly you can imagine Godwin's resources are now being stretched thin because now they've raised money for the girls to go to Ivory Coast. 2 months later, less than, they've now got to go and play a 3-test series in Madagascar. Then you've got the men's team having to go to Mauritius. Then you have to drop a whole range of those boys in order for them to now come and be able to play in Kampala. It's tough. It really is tough. Not enough money in women's game? Absolutely. More governments have got to understand the importance of gender. We now have female presidents in Tanzania. Namibia, the president is a woman, the sports minister is a woman, and we're appealing to them to put more money into the sport, but look at gender side, and see how they can actually start putting money back into the game as well.
One of the other aspects is telling the rugby story from an African point of view. We see other continents, other regions, and how they tell their story, from the Six Nations to what used to be the Heineken Cup to other different aspects. Do you think Africa is doing enough with telling its rugby story?
I don't think so. I think it's a journey that is just beginning. And I know my communications team, myself, a few others are looking at how we can now change the narrative. We're looking at something that says, how do we bring the lifestyle of the African youth into play? Because you're right, until the lion learns how to write its own story, it is only the hunter's version of the encounter we'll ever know. And I think that's part of Africa's problems. And we have to now, rather than take the old people's view on how to communicate the story, we need to understand that the greatest creativity are the kids. It's not the people who go and scratch and paint on walls anymore. They sit on devices and create imagery and stories and TikTok and things to depict what it is they really like.
Yeah.
We need to harness that, tie that back into the sport for people to listen and learn and understand. First, that there's more than one sport than football.
Yeah.
Secondly, that Africa is the greatest place on earth. Thirdly, that the people within Africa can do anything better than everybody else if they're well organized.
And I think my last question to you would be, I don't know if you've had time to reflect as your tenure comes to the close. What would those things be that you would say are your key achievements?
I actually never look at life like that. Somebody says, what do you want your legacy to be? I don't. I get in on a mission, and the mission is to see what it is that can be achieved. I enter football, and I'm very clear. We professionalize it, we change it, and understanding that the concepts of modern sports are the same anywhere else. So in terms of football, the sports nutrition, which I study a lot of, you don't need to go buy journals and stuff from outside. You know that there is a stimulant in coffee. You know the antioxidants in the fruit and vegetables that you eat. You know that if you have simple carbs in the afternoon, it does this. Complex carbs gives you energy and power to move. You know that within your own vegetation, you've got better quality food than getting it. So you can mix and match that to try and that's what we did in the world of football.
Yeah.
Change the training regimens, make them of a certain level. Rugby, you've seen what's going on right now. And I don't expect people to come in and see the world the way I see it. I look at myself as a globalist. So if I run my businesses in a previous lifetime, I made sure that if this is the standard, I took this standard. Don't take this standard because you're in Africa. So I used to be once upon a time like a big deal in mobile phones. At one time, I was the 7th largest in the whole world. And people said to me, how the hell do you get up doing that? And I understand. You're a black boy in a white man's world. You better make sure that your time management, your systems, procedures, and what you do are better than what anybody expects. You see, and that's what's made me so happy about Uganda, because bringing Jonathan Weather and David Carrigan in here, they've got on a plane, is interesting. I said, next time, why don't you get on Air Uganda? And they're telling me next time they're coming here on Air Uganda. But you see, now you've gone 7 hours one way to Dubai. You've waited and you're tired, and then you take another X number of hours to come here. You keep saying something, the mind. You need to begin to change.
I know.
Then it is the airport.
My partner, they recently took a trip to Tunisia. They had of us go to Turkey and then wait from there, and then they come back.
And come back.
Oh.
You see, then they were met, and people were friendly. Nobody was harassing them for their money. The item Webb Ellis Trophy was safe. They came through, and everything was there. They met media who spoke to them, and people were courteous, and people were not overawed. It wasn't like, big white man come to town, let's all run around. It was respect. They've come into the hotel, they've had the time of their life. Guess what? They've drank now beer, and they realize now beer is nicer than the beers they drink in Europe. Then it is they've come to the stadium. The pitch is perfect. The game time is great. They don't have a fan park like that at Twickenham. So they've left here thinking, what an experience. And they've still got the buzz right now. So I call afterwards and I say, will you tell the rest of the board what you've experienced? He says, my God, I will. So will it change anything tomorrow? No, but it's the beginning of the change of things. I will leave Rugby Africa at some point and we'll disappear. We're not people who, as Africans, say, oh, he's done well. Come get an OBA, let's knight you. They would normally wait until you're dead. You see what I'm saying? Then they say, you remember that guy? No. Hey, do you remember Kampala that time? Oh, do you remember Mauritius? Then they say, oh, great. Where's that guy? That's who we are as a people. You know what I'm saying? When I ran football, when I was released from running the team because the politicians believed that I had just become too big, because I could put 60 to 70,000 into the stadium for a domestic match. So nobody watched English football. On big matches, they spent 3 days waiting at the stadium to buy a ticket for a local match. When I took it over, the stadiums were empty. By the time we've changed it, and we've now created this movement where people even come into the Kumasi ecosystem for weekend football, which is played on a Sunday, hotel space rented, restaurants, and the rest of it. Then it is the player haters eventually say, this guy might get into politics. What the hell do I want to get into politics for? You see. But eventually it becomes something where then they say, I think you should step down for this. Guess what? I stepped down. Guess what? 3 months later, the stadium's empty. Guess what? They can't get. Then they say, "Oh, will you come back?" I say, "I'm not Frank Sinatra. I don't come back. It's my way. I can't sing, otherwise I would. It's my way." And you move on. So Rugby Africa, there's people who get what we're trying to do, and they're so enthused by it. And then you got the people who they don't care, even if you're doing good, they don't like it. So I don't think you should take the job and say, I really want to leave, and people say this is what you achieved, and you go down for something. No. But we're here to do a job.
You did receive a Lifetime Achievement Award in Ghana. How did that make you feel?
I've received 2 in the last year. Yeah. First, I got the highest honor in Ghana from our president for Lifetime Achievement in Sports. It was Order of the Volta, which was surprising because I'm not a politician, and it was at the end of their tenure, but it went down very well. Everybody thought it was a big deal, and then recently the sports people also gave me a Lifetime Award, and I'm humbled, and I stated that really this award is for everybody who was on the journey with me, because you don't make a journey by yourself. You embark on a journey with people who often actually don't know where the journey is going to end, but they have faith in you as a human being, and therefore they follow you on this journey. And so your responsibility is for all of those people who follow. If I'm around in a year's time, we would have done things that the world has not seen. I'm sitting down talking to that extraordinarily beautiful young lady over there. And I think
the compliments help, because she wants to kill us for the time spent.
And I'm saying we need to create something in the fan world. If it gets off the ground, that should be something that we spark a light with. that changes the world completely. And if you can do that, if you can change your life, especially the life of somebody who you only go to the stadium to watch a game. You know, they want to say, where's Ruben? You do the Fat Cats. Oh, that's you. I want to be like you one day. And you think it's about the mic. It's not. That you are that liberated that you can get up and talk some stuff. Maybe in their world. If you're touching hearts and souls and minds that way, then what you're doing makes sense. If you're not, then it's about you.
And finally, I know you get a lot of you sit in front of so many cameras, get asked so many questions. But what would you, if given the chance, what one question would you ask me?
Would I ask you? I'd probably ask you, Ruben, have you really identified what your purpose in life is? Because if you believe that this is it, then you fail before God. Everybody is a point that leads you into another point.
Yeah.
That determines the tomorrow. Today is irrelevant, it's gone. So if you go last year and you're here today, to the business world, you've got X thousands of people following. But have you ever thought about what your purpose in life is? You know, that's critical. Not whether you're going to... Have you ever thought about what your real purpose in life is?
I think this is why you're not the interviewer usually, because now that's a very tricky question. But if I'm being very honest, I think it's still a journey. I wouldn't lie to you and I say that I've fully understood what the purpose is. But I think with what we're doing right now, it is leading me towards what the purpose would be. This is not the purpose, but I think that it is I'm on the right track.
You need to identify the purpose. Because if you identify the purpose, the journey will make more sense. You know, because everybody is equipped. If you're a soldier, equipped with a gun or a knife or a grenade or something. And then you go. If you enter into the battlefield with nothing, you're probably going to get your head blown off. So if you say that the big man has given you some skills, when you sit down and you, heaven forbid, strip naked in front of a mirror and you look at yourself and without talking and then you say, this is who I am. Your physicality is irrelevant. What is it that you have that the gentleman with the camera who is better with camera than you are, but what is it that you have? Because if you can identify what you have, then ask yourself, are you using it beyond your ego to the maximum extent? Yeah. If you are too, what is your purpose in life?
Well, I don't think there is ever enough time to speak to President Herbert Mensah because the conversation can go on and on. But that's the beauty of podcasts. You can have a part 1, part 2, up to a part 10 perhaps. But again, we are always thankful for the time that you do give us, and we hope that you are enjoying Uganda. You're a very busy man, but please find some time to actually enjoy our country. Our invite still stands as the Fat Cats that you and your team would like to maybe perhaps take you somewhere on something a little more informal, something fun, something out of the boardroom, something out of the assignments and the tasks. But we are grateful for the fact that you always give us the chance to have a conversation with you, pick out a few things. I believe my team as well has picked out a few things, although some of them are still on their phones. But thank you very much for your time. And for all those that are watching this, of course, this was powered by Rock Boom. Special shout out to our other partners now special. And of course, make sure that you enjoy this podcast and let us know what you think. Cheers.
Thank you.